What are some of the things that you empower your students to help prime their mind or prime yourself around getting at it and going for it and keep on
Yeah,
pushing?
yeah, Nate, that's a super cool question. And actually, it's more of a skill of staying on task. Again, when I teach fighting with tactics, because it's tactically driven, you're fighting, you're doing all of the skills and drills with your intentions. Your tactics are your intentions. Your strategies are what you are more personally connected to. They're the closest thing to your core values. And then outside of that, layer by layer, from core values out to strategy, out to tactics, now you start having the technical things that happen because of which area you're in. And typically which area you're operating in are derived from your core values.
Welcome to the podcast. Nathan Newberry here, your host. Super pumped to have you on the show. We got Shaun Schubert here, who's going to talk about his story and the amazing success that he has. But Shaun, super pumped to have you right out the gate here. I want to just talk about a little bit about what you believe and how you've seen high performance apply to your life. Like, what is that definition and how does that look like for you?
Nice, Nate. Thanks for having me on, man. And rippers right out of the gate. I like that. Just like my fighting style. Coming out swinging.
Boom.
That's good. I like that. No softballs on this high performance podcast. I dig it. Uh, I'll say that it's a balance between your physical and your mental. There has to be this kind of scale where you are doing what is physically required of you, but also you need to have a good balance of how to scale that with the mental kind of exercises as well.
Totally. And tell the audience here, like your success. What have you built out? What do you do right now? How do you help people?
I
Kind of describe
am
that for us.
currently a gym owner. I recently retired. You actually caught me about a week out from my 1 year anniversary. I was recently, up till now, a professional fighter who had a gym that was a cool spot for me to train at and make a couple bucks on the side while I was fighting. And now that fighting is over for me, I'm taking a full lean into coaching, bringing high performance athletes to the top levels. I am writing a book that's actually being formatted for publication as we're talking right now. And I'm in the middle of filming out a high performance mental fight camp, which goes hand in hand again with fighters that are doing the physical fight camps. Everybody hears about the UFC fighters or these one championship fighters, and they talk about their diets and their exercise and all these kind of pieces, and nobody is getting into the nitty gritty of how these guys are pushing through. What are they doing to support themselves with gratification versus gratitude? What are they doing to push them through when the motivation runs dry and they just have to run on discipline? What are they doing when they're showing up to perform on game day? And that's what I'm getting into on the online side. So I'm still running my gym, bringing fighters up through the ranks, and the book's coming out super soon, and the podcast and all the online course stuff should be out in about February. So
Super cool, man.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, the reason why I
so
wanted
super
to
cool.
have you on too is because as a high performer, there's some things that you had to go through where it's not like just a typical route of entrepreneurship. You've went through it where you've had to really build yourself up with that mental game. Like fighting is a whole nother level than just building a business. There's some,
Oh, for
commonalities with like challenges, but like the grit, the grind, the discipline, like you're talking about the mindset to just like grit your teeth and go all at it. Like, how did you build that tolerance of pain up until this point that you have right now with building a business now? Like, Let's go back to like the very beginning of like why you started fighting. Why did you start building a gym? How did you know you were a little bit different as a high performer that got you to this point to the success you have now?
Yeah, those are a lot of good questions. Like, I like it. Roll it super far back, I guess. I started martial arts when I was about 6. I was always a high energy kid, getting in trouble when I was in kindergarten, preschool, like, just messing around too much. No naps, no sitting still, just let's go,
Hmm.
So I was always kind of labeled as a kid that's off the wall, the ADHD thing, the needs special attention, creates disruptions, but I work well by myself. I had a super knack when I got into more the higher grades up into high school for like, um, just kind of listening to a bunch of people go through their presentations and I'll just raise my hand. I'm ready to go. And I'll just get up and like, wow, put it all together. Like, never read the books, never read the chapters, just kind of, muscled my way through it. And it, uh, it was more than fake it till you make it. It was like you had to figure out what worked for you to get there. And I was doing that for a while. I was always playing sports because of a broken home where I was always needing to kind of be guided, staying out of trouble, somebody to look after me. I was big into hockey from all the way when I could walk, doing martial arts to stay out of trouble, played football because I liked the contact. And it was just always that kind of like physical thing for me was always an outlet, was always a way for me to keep it reined in and like a safe spot for it to go so that you could avoid getting in trouble, right? So that you're avoiding fighting in school. I never really got kicked out of school for fighting. I never got, in trouble for doing bad stuff like that because I had the discipline of martial arts. I had a place for it to go when I'm playing hockey or football and taking it out physically on the field. And it was something that I recognized later on in life that like, wow, that stuff was like super necessary and is still super necessary for me to get things done. Even before this podcast, I posted a couple of things. I ripped the bag. I did a couple of warm up things. I'm ripping kettlebells and I'm like getting a sweat on, listening to my music, my
Yeah.
fight camp playlist. And I'm like getting in the headspace of like, all right, dude, let's go perform, right?
Yeah.
And the crossover is crazy. So I was always into martial arts growing up, mostly to keep me out of trouble. The same thing with school sports. The only reason I did well in school was so that I could play sports. You got to get at least a D to be able to be on the hockey team. So like, it keeps you out of failing, So those were kind of the drivers that motivated me to get through school. I ended up switching high schools in the middle about probably like 10th grade. I ended up switching high schools. I had another kind of thing where I got into some trouble. Ended up like in the hospital for some psychological stuff, and I was out for 2 weeks, trained uh, in these different group settings, and then made my way into a new high school where eventually I found a trade. I worked as a chef for like 10 years before I got into like I said,
Wow.
martial arts was just like a hobby of mine. It was always something I did. I was working as a chef and working in
You sound like
bars.
Rocky in the back freezer, like punching ribs or
Haha,
something while you cook that.
a little bit, yeah. I mean, there were some times where it's like, you bring your running shoes and like do a couple of sprints in the parking lot while, the
There you go. Yeah.
prep cooks are getting stuff done. Yeah, I did a couple of stuff. I had some stories, man. So that's it. Like that was my high school thing. I end up graduating high school, happiest day in my mother's life, and uh, I ended up moving to Canada on a whim. I had like a hope and a dream. I worked all the way through high school because I was developing that trade of culinary. They let you go out on programs instead of going to school. Again, another motivator for me to
Hmm.
get through these things where you could go out to work instead of going sitting in a classroom, which was a good look for me. So it was nice for me to get out and do that while I was still in high school at a young age. I got used to kind of the daily grind, getting up and going to work instead of getting up and going to school and dealing with corporate stuff because it had to fit these guidelines of what the school would allow. You know, it's hard to work at a mom and pop place that, maybe has some different guidelines than you go work at a chain restaurant and they have all these standards and all these
Right.
SOPs and whatever the thing is. So I learned the corporate thing and then I got into working for myself. I was doing some of my own gigs, going to food shows, doing some private work, rented out a kitchen from a guy, and was doing the fighting thing again as a hobby. And just like, again, I was
Yeah.
training and wanted to see how far did my training get me. Then I started competing in fighting, and again, more trouble, drinking, partying at the bar, doing a whole bunch of stuff that you do while you're at a bar, and that was it, man. Got arrested, lost the whole thing. The guy at the gym was like, my Miyagi, hey man, do you want to open up a school with me? And you run the classes, I'll be the figurehead. We can build some stuff up together. And um, about a year into being in business together, some of his own demons caught up with him, and he ended up taking his own life and left me with the whole gig. No mentor, just
Hmm.
kind of got me out of trouble and got himself out of trouble, I guess was his like.
Was he a very helpful person, like while you're building this up to really kind of help you into that? How critical was he in your life?
He was super critical in my life. He was, when I was 6, I went to classical martial arts, and then uh,
And
through
he was
some
there. He was your teacher since six.
well, that's what I was going to say is I started there at 6 and then I left about 10 to go to this guy. So he was my guy
Oh
in
wow.
martial arts from like probably 10 years old until about 23, 24 is probably like when I got
Oh
into
yeah,
trouble.
man.
Yeah, man, it was some heavy stuff.
So he's been really influential in your life with your techniques and what you've been able to now get to now. That's a huge impression upon your life. I'm sorry that happened. I mean, gosh, but that's he left a legacy. It sounds like in your life.
Well, he for certain left an imprint on me that it would be unmatched to say by anybody, of course.
Hmm.
And that's where my roots
Yeah,
inevitably started. That little 6-year-old thing till 6 till 10. That's
yeah,
some fun stuff where you're kind of getting acclimated with some movements and what have
yeah.
yous, but your understanding of what you're doing there is pretty slim. But then, 10 to 13, 15, 18, 20, 21, like, that guy was there for some real developmental times in my life. And
Mm.
when when he passed away, it was for sure a very difficult thing to start getting over. And then the the real page turner was that I needed to kind of separate what I was going to be doing from then on from what that brand was that was essentially going to be scarred by what he's leaving behind. So
Was there a switch in your mind at that point? Because I know many times we have these line in the sand moments where it's just like, all right, I got to go pro. I got to like lean in. Was that one of those? Like, bring us back to the point, like when you decided to
that
go
was a
pro into martial
that
arts,
was
like,
a that was
was,
a huge lane shifter because
hmm,
that was the point. About a year in, I was still working part-time as a pizza delivery boy because the hours worked for me. I would come in, open my gym 6 a.m. till 10 a.m. and go to a lunch place and deliver subs from 11 till 2, 3, 4, whatever, and then come back in, run my gym at night through prime time, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then get up and do that whole grind again until I again had another opportunity to expand another pivotal part of having my gym, having changed the name. I got invited to go to Thailand with a new group of guys that I started picking up some more training with. And I picked up a third shift where I was bouncing in Boston doing security at the nightclubs to try to fund myself for extra money to go on this Thailand trip. And I'd say coming home from Thailand, that was the biggest moment in what I did as a fighter and a business owner. And I would say that I have been in business for 10 years, but after meeting guys like you and Dan Martell, some of my other high level mentors, I have been in business for 10 years, but I only started doing business for the last year. I'll say
Yeah.
that because I was paying attention to too many other things, you know, uh, and
Hmm.
and coming back from Thailand that first year, about oh man, it was a couple of years before COVID, so I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
8 or 10, yeah, eight, I'd say 8 years ago. So it was like my second year into owning the business. Yeah.
Let me ask you the mindset of a fighter. Like, help me understand that because I'm like getting into a fight, getting into the ring, preparing for it all along. Like, what kind of things did you have to prepare for? Your mindset, the discipline. What does that look like?
It was a huge journey. It was really at the beginning of my combat sports career as an amateur that I figured out like, how important the psychological part of fighting is, especially from person to person. It's different. Everybody, just like everybody has a different why for whatever else they're doing. Some guys have a certain why as to what they're doing in here. When I started doing it, I wanted to know, does my martial arts work? No, it was subpar. So it
Mm.
pushed me into wanting to be more proficient, to be better at these arts and sports and better at protecting myself and someday my family and whatever else have you. Maybe somebody else in the population that needs a hand that's, like in a
Yeah.
situation they need somebody, like who knows? Who knows what we're going to get to? Who knows where we're at, whatever that might be, but those those pieces sometimes come together. So I was always training for a reason. And then when I got to a place where I had my own gym, essentially, it was like this guy left me holding a basket that he's like, here you go, hold this, and then was gone. Right? Where like he had the notoriety, he had the big name, and he had the business for the last whatever 10, 12, 15, 20 years, whatever, what, you understand, like
Yeah.
I'm nobody. I'm just like his right hand man. I'm just another guy. So then it turned into like, whoa, man, I'm like fighting for notoriety. I'm fighting for my place in where, this community, there, the scene of mixed martial arts and Muay Thai and all that kind of stuff. Like you have to get a respected name because,
Yeah.
just like in business, like anybody can open a business, anybody can say they're in business, but like
Yeah.
you got to do
Let,
some stuff
let
to
me ask you
earn
this
that
too.
respect.
Like, when you're coaching some of your students and
Yeah.
then what you had to go through, sometimes there's the mental mindset of like, let's take the past of all the pain and the hardship and the people that you had to prove wrong and
Well,
like funnel that toward what you
yeah.
got to do right
Let
now,
me
or is it more
like I
positive?
can reel it. I'll reel it back because again, like a lot of that came from a chip off my shoulder, and a lot of people have a different why.
Yeah.
But there are different biological mechanisms that happen in you. There are natural chemicals that your body produces. There's way more to the puzzle than people see at surface level. They call nerves and butterflies, all these different things that are basically just fillers for all these words and feelings that they have maybe no idea what they're feeling. They could be feeling excitement and they're getting butterflies in their stomach, and really that's the cortisol that's like lowering their stress. Or they could be getting adrenaline dumps thinking about fighting or whatever. There's lots of different avenues that these things can go down, and only they really know what it is. So
Yeah.
coming from where I was and going to where I wanted to be, I was fighting for notoriety. I was fighting in the wrong sport. So a lot of people, they confuse the combat sports. There's the UFC, a big brand. There's One Championship, a big brand. There's different boxing promotions, all big brands. So the big brands are simply promotions, and the sports go under these different avenues that all fall under combat sports. So I tried my hand in a bunch of stuff to, again, carve out my little niche and my place and earn my respect through what I was doing. And I ended up having a decent striking background for MMA and a poor wrestling background, which was getting me on the opposite side of where I wanted to be in these competitions. So I switched sports into Muay Thai, which is a full striking art. The takedowns are limited to what you can do. There's no wrestling and grappling on the floor. It's strictly striking with your fists, feet, knees, elbows, and that's it. Once the guy falls down, just like in boxing, they stand him back up, and you keep fighting for more of that. And I did that for about 40 fights, including professional fights, going from Massachusetts, New York, everything regionally around here, internationally in Thailand. And it was through the help of sports psychologists, and I was actually went through sessions of being hypnotized to get my mind to get over some of these speed bumps of previous failures, or you know preconceived uh meditations about where I was in the fight world, and then coming up short over and over and over again, and having to kind of reinvest and reaffirm like back in myself. So
Amazing, man. I'm just enamored by the this type of thing because what entrepreneurs that try to portray in their mind is that they're fighting, right? They're fighting for their business, for their family, their life. And you do it physically and you train people, which is like the contact sport that you're talking about. If we were going to like relate some of the things that you do, that you train, and you look at that into terms of like entrepreneurship, of like building something, how do those fundamentals of like discipline, the mindset, how do those translate? What are those things that you would, when you take someone on as a student that you're just you're saying, hey, this is what we're going to go through, this is what we're going to deal with. How does that kind of relate with entrepreneurship and business now?
I think that there's definitely, again, a lot of avenues that we could start to go down some of these
Yeah.
things. And this, again, why my teaching style when I teach Muay Thai is about fighting with tactics instead of being technique driven. Because when you start getting into all these fine details of techniques, then it turns into a game of memorization where we're all different individuals. Something that's good for you might be bad for me. Something that we both do as people might be natural for you and unnatural for me. So we have to kind of play the game and set these rules and standards. So if you're a new student, what I want to do is draw you a picture of what happens here. And then I want to set standards for you. And then I want to train you and bring you through the core skills, the fundamentals. We relate it to your, again, natural abilities. So why you're having some of these responses and reflexes and how we can build them in more efficiently. My goal for everybody is integrating skill. So I use a lot of things like NLP, that's neuro linguistic programming. I use a lot of different methodologies. That's the study of different methods. I use my own method to map out how to integrate skill by being deliberate, by being in the right context, by doing things on purpose with purpose. And that's where you start off as a student of mine. And then everybody that's a student gets to level up, where they start off in core skills and then they move into what we call like a general population, where they're getting a wide variety of details into these core skill tactics. And from there, they get more personalized training with me. They get to show that they're picking up some of my method. They're showing some of the support to the team. They're getting in some of these competitive conflicts and kind of ride or die, waving the flag for the fellas and the ladies out here,
Yeah.
right? Even for the people outside of the ring that are just fans, they can come out and support and be a part of the thing. And then again, they level up from general population to this apprentice group, which is again my core group, my right hand men and ladies that are teaching all my classes. They're teaching private lessons. They're running the ship while I'm running the business.
What are some things that you've found that have been really good principles for you, to deal with failure or with getting hit? It's like, what are those things that you tell yourself, you say to yourself before a fight or before you're training people, and just say, look, this is happening, deal with it, like suck it up, buttercup? Like, what are some of the things that you empower your students to help prime their mind or prime yourself around getting at it and going for it and keep on
Yeah.
pushing?
Yeah, Nate, that's a super cool question. And actually, it's more of a skill of staying on task. Again, when I teach fighting with tactics, because it's tactically driven, you're fighting, you're doing all of the skills and drills with your intentions. Your tactics are your intentions. Your strategies are what you are more personally connected to. They're the closest thing to your core values. And then outside of that kind of layer by layer, from core values out to strategy, out to tactics, now you start having the technical things that happen because of which area you're in. And typically which area you're operating in are derived from your core values. You're strategizing what's most closely personalized to you. So you're then seeing what kind of fighter these kind of people are. So I'll say that fighting with tactics or training with tactics or having a tactically based method where you're able to outline it, group details, and then start operating and fixing what you're needing to fix while you're operating with what you're naturally good at.
Love that. I see some similarities here with entrepreneurship, with business, where it's like you have to have some clarity around, hey, getting some support to know even how to do those tactics, right? Oftentimes people wing it by like reading a business book or something. They just have no idea what they're doing. And so they need some core tactics here with that. And then like with training and practice, how important is that? in the day to day?
That's so cool that you asked me that. The whole method that we're framed around is three activities. You do the activity that you want to get better at. So in our industry, it's obviously the fighting. So we spar,
Hmm.
we have controlled oppositional drills and elements that we do, and then we move into practice, which is essentially gaining the efficiency of the skill that you're looking for. You have to have the experience and then experiment in the game to be able to start pulling things into practice. Practice are the things that, again, we said your natural abilities will carry you. The practice gets sucked in by that, saying, hey, I'm good at this, but I need to work on this. This is where you become effective. Training are the drills that help you do more structure. They help you gauge where the distance is and they help you run more timing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the length of time it takes for someone to be really, really like a pro? How many years does that take?
It could take as little as like 6 months or a year, depending on, again, natural abilities.
Yeah. When you were younger, you probably had a really strong drive for like proving yourself, which was more of like a dark energy of like push and power from like resiliency. But now that you have a family, it's more of like a positive, like future hope, right? Does a what is that, and how was that transferred from the negative dark power that got up to your success now, and then maybe that shift?
Yeah, man, I was for sure into that more, like you're saying, that chip on my shoulder. It's funny that you
Mm-hmm.
say it like that because you kind of like really nailed it. I like again said I was playing sports growing up. I was really into the physical part of it. I have done personality tests, motivators, all kinds of like drivers of why and my charts for some of these motivators of like physical contact and for uh they categorize it as vengeance, but it's really more like your competitive nature falls into that
Yeah,
category. But it gets generalized because, typically it's like you just want to get your victory, right? So like that, falls into that kind of category. So it's like that was a very high motivator for me, and to have a place to put that was a real good thing. It probably kept me out of doing some real serious stuff that was stupid enough to land me in jail or enough trouble where, I'd have been screwed for life. You know, uh, like I was I was in some real serious hot water for a little while where like I legitimately had to change my like I had to change everything, dude, because people knew me. People know, like they're like, oh,
mm,
like this is what they say about you, right? Now what they say about me is, oh, that guy is a fighter. Oh, that guy is successful at fighting. Oh, that guy is good at fighting. Oh, that guy owns a successful gym. Oh, that guy, he's on podcasts and he writes books and right? But it was that guy gets banged up at the bar. That guy is just a cook down
yeah,
over at the Waffle House. Like that guy, you know what I mean? Like I
yeah,
was
yeah,
living that like, kind of like third rate life, dude. And because of a third rate mindset, it was like I had the discipline, but it was misguided and had no focus. And then when fighting became actually like a real opportunity instead of just trying to see if I was good at it, then it was like, okay, well, I'm fighting for notoriety, but like then I'm getting good at it. So like now I'm getting noticed for other stuff. I have the notoriety, then it starts to build like, well, what am I really fighting for? Because like, what's my new why? And again, it was just like, just keep grinding for your gym, keep grinding for the people that go to your gym, keep grinding for whatever that was. So, that was like probably another like big transition point for me. It was like kind of taking that anger away because playing like high school sports, I was leveling people on the football field or on the ice playing hockey just because I wanted to get physical, just because I wanted to see if I could send you to the hospital or get you like dragged out of the game or whatever. Like I was just like a real
Yeah.
angry kid, and it shifted from like it forced me into that like, oh man, like nobody wants to hang out with this guy that's just angry all the time, right? Like nobody wants to be around that guy and like nobody wants to date that guy, right? So it made me have to shift, and because I still have a lot of that like energy in me even when I was a kid before I had all the kind of trauma that made me more angry, right? I was
Yeah.
still high energy. So there was high energy, blasted with testosterone as a teenager, blasted with a bad attitude. And it just kind of, went
Yeah.
haywire from there for a little while till, again, it was like the fighting was like, oh man, you got to change your reputation. You're getting into this fighting thing. You're starting to get like a good name about this. Like you could do some real serious stuff with it. Like let's
Yeah.
go, and it really like again was that another hurdle that I like before I started a family, before I realized that like settling down was another big part of like what I actually wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to fight first. I knew I wanted to do something enough to create a legacy because fighting again was never my idea to have a legacy fighting that was always just a passion of mine and something to do with my energy and something that I wanted
Mhm.
to get good at to bring notoriety to my gym. There was never a thing where I said, oh, I got to go to UFC. I never said I have to go to any of these places. I just ended up going there because I had passion. I fought on the UFC's Fight Pass because I had passion and drive to fight. I fought at the House of Blues in Boston on the biggest promotion for Muay Thai because I had passion. I took the
Mhm.
time to go away from my business and bring myself to train in Thailand for 6 weeks, bring my family overseas for 6 weeks, and make them live that lifestyle while I trained to fight over there several times so I could, again, come home with notoriety. And then again, do it again the next year as a coach is like such another different big mental shift where it was like, I took another kid there from zero to hero. It was his first pro fight. We got him to the biggest stadium in the world for Muay Thai. He fought on extremely reputable fight promotion. He fought a very well decorated kid who had multiple professional fights already, and he beat the bag out of this kid, dropped him with elbows in the second round, did everything perfect. It was beautiful. We was on Thai TV. We're getting recognized at the market. We're having a good end of the trip. It was a beautiful experience. And again, it really solidified
That's
like
cool.
taking that next step from
Mm.
just nobody to making a name for myself to notoriety for my business, doing some cool stuff,
Yeah.
instilling that into other people, bringing them from zero to hero, bringing them to international fighting. And
What I love about that is
that,
that it's like in anything you do, you have to have this resolve mentally. And many times at the very beginning of whatever we start with a venture of fighting in our life and whatever risk that we take, if it's business or something, it's often related to some scar we got, some battle wound that we're starting to resolve ourselves to. And oftentimes that comes from a dark place, but it's only sustainable for so far. And then there's a shift toward how can I help others? And it sounds like on your journey that it ends up being others focused and central focused. And when that turns, it's more of this positive outlook and it's more sustainable with feeling that way. And I
100%.
love that you
And
made
it's
that
super, super
shift, man.
powerful, dude. It's super powerful, Nate. And if any of your listeners are going to resonate with what we're talking about, I would hope that they will follow me on Instagram. I left my handle down here at the bottom so that everybody can get a look at me on Instagram. Give me a like, give me a follow, send me a message about this conversation. Just write mental in the chat and write that we're here with Nate. And I'll
Heck yeah.
send you a blueprint of what I'm doing for the book, what I'm doing for the mental fight camp stuff. And again, it's all my blueprints of what I'm doing right now for these fighters and what I did for myself to get this far. So
It's amazing, man. Appreciate you being on. Super glad we had this discussion, dude. Super pumped. Down below, we'll have all the links like you had mentioned, and then we'll just wrap it up from here.
Nate,
Shaun, super stoked, man. Any last thoughts here?
no, man, I'm super grateful to be where I'm at, and it's a big shout out to the community that we're in, and I'm really finding out how powerful some of these tools are that you have and that I have from just being in these rooms. So,
Yeah.
shout out to our guy Dan Martell. Shout out to my mentors Tom Sotis and Sean Graham. Shout out to my team at Red Seal and my wife Allie, who's at home taking care of my son while I'm staying late at the gym to do this podcast. And shout out to whatever brought us together, man. Like
Yeah.
that's like super cool. And I did my research on you before I got on the show. Like, you're like super into, like you said, building systems, building these AI super fucking hacks that can get people, to where they want to be leveling up. And I think it's really cool. I hope that we can connect further on some of that stuff because I'm like, again, super interested in just all the education that I've been missing as a business owner because I was doing too much. It was a lot of time spent half in the business and half in fight camp. And when you're in fight camp, it's all the way in. The business is just running on autopilot. I set up an atmosphere that was good for me as a fighter to train in, and it was less set up for the average person. It's less set up to do well in business where I need to make some shifts as somebody that's retired from fighting and that's looking at this gym from a different perspective now, where I can see like, wow, we were definitely exiling a lot of people because we're starting at volume 11, right? We're going from that 50 to 100 with no bridges. Like we're finding what people are naturally good at, but the people that were unnaturally good at everything needed a spot to go to. They needed to start at the beginning. Some people were starting with no previous experience. Some people were starting with some experience. Some people were already athletes. Some people were older. Some people were younger. Some people were caught in the middle of whatever have you, fighting injuries and whatever that is. So we really focused the last year on building an atmosphere that's a hub where fighters can come to, where now they can work with me privately instead of there's just a mass group of people that are here for me because I'm selfishly trying to better my fight career. Now there's a place where fighters can go to. They can train one-to-one with me. We have apprentice groups and higher level training groups, but we also have this very basic core skills level where you could go from core skills having none to all of the fundamentals in 90 days. You could be naturally good at all of it and say, hey, I'd like to do the opt-out and take your assessment early, see if you can get into the ring and start the general population stuff. But there's that place where people can go and there's no test, there's no force you out of it. There's just levels that you can grow into or that you can stay at and just operate and love the activity. And that's what it
Amazing,
really
man.
comes down to, is that I loved the activity and I lost sight of what I loved because I was fighting for other pieces of the passion.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on the podcast here with us. Again, until next time, stay focused, stay with that grit and that grind and focus, and you got it. We'll see you next time on the next
Hey,
High
thank you, man.
Performance
Appreciate
Show.
it.